and welcome to today's episode of Political Junction. In today's episode, I will be interviewing Iain Anderson. Now, little over a year ago, Mr. Anderson resigned from his post as LGBTQ+ business champion as a result of the government's unwillingness to ban transgender conversion therapy. Today, I talk with Iain about his life before politics, his roles and responsibilities, and the reasons in which he resigned from government. We also discuss his career since government, his business, and his continued work in activism. All that and more on today's episode of Political Junction. Hello Iain. I'm Oscar da Silva from Political Junction, and today I'm talking to Iain Anderson. Welcome, Iain.
Great to be with you.
Yes, it's nice to have you here. Well, first I would like to talk to you about the start of your career in politics, when you were a business journalist, is that right?
That's right. Yeah. I was, there's lots of ways into journalism. So I kind of trained as a kind of classic news journalist. And I thought that not many people want to be business journalists. People want to be sports writers. They want to be news reporters. They actually want to be political journalists, although I've obviously got that bug too. But I thought actually business journalism might be a way of kind of growing faster. Everyone's interested in business now, I suppose. It's maybe a bit more competitive these days.
Slightly, yeah. And then I know after that you moved on to work for Kenneth Clarke, is that right? Who's now a Lord, and he was Chancellor under Thatcher or John Major, of course, yeah. And I know that you worked with him in his campaigns, and I'd really like to know about what that was like.
Yeah. So the thing about Ken is he loves jazz and he loves curry. So listen to a lot of jazz. Ate a lot of curry. I still enjoy both. Wore a lot of suede shoes. But the serious point, though, is that Ken is one of the most unspinnable people in politics I know. Sure. Maybe actually other than Boris Johnson. Because of that, from a communications perspective, trying to control the message, get Ken on script, get him on message, absolutely impossible to do, because he would just speak his mind. Because he spoke his mind, actually, that was one of the reasons he was, I think, so powerful as a politician. I mean, he created a tremendous connection with voters, either on an individual level or through a television lens or a kind of whatever format. Ken just had this ability to connect, in a way, as I say, that Boris Johnson does, because he just appears to kind of see exactly, really what's in there, as opposed to what's being spun. Yeah. And there are lots of lessons, maybe from that and around that experience for our politics today.
So, do you see him as sort of a role model as to what a good politician can be today?
Oh, I mean, look, he still remains a complete inspiration for me. I think the Conservative Party made a huge mistake. They had 3 opportunities to elect him as leader, but they didn't go that way. That was probably Ken's views on Europe, given where the Conservative Party was moving on that subject. I mean, I do think that politicians who are authentic, who say what they believe, connect.
Absolutely. And if a young person like me, for example, if we wanted to follow in your footsteps and come to work for someone like that, how did you get into it, and how would you advise someone else to do the same?
Yeah, so I mean, when I was both at school and university, very interested in politics, always on, if you like, in terms of that interest. I worked for an MP during some of my kind of summer holidays. You'd call that an internship now. It wasn't quite as organized when I was younger, but you would call it an internship now. So I did that for several summers. Kind of got to understand Westminster and how the political machine operated, how the political machine ticks. And that's been over the years a very well-worn way into getting involved. But there are lots of ways to get involved in politics these days in a way that frankly, online just wasn't available to me. So, starting to kind of write about what you think, starting to either get published or self-publish, and trying to kind of catch people's eye with interesting ideas. I think that's, there's a tremendous opportunity, a tremendous sort of democratization, actually, in a way, of how you can get involved in politics these days.
So, of course, so instead of like going down the traditional route and going straight to a low-level ministerial post, you'd suggest trying to get involved in politics through other mediums, starting in journalism and then working your way up to a higher-ranking ministerial post.
Yeah. I mean, I believe our best politicians have actually done something else. We're talking about Ken. Ken was a lawyer. He was a barrister. I was involved in journalism before I got involved in politics, before I got involved in what I do right now in terms of communications, PR, public affairs. I do think that really good politicians have done something other than politics.
Yeah. And moving on to the next bit, I want to talk about, of course, the recent stuff with you being the LGBTQ plus business champion in the government. And I want to start to ask first, how did that come about for you? How did that opportunity arise?
Well, I've been involved in sort of LGBT activism and activism around business in that sense for the last 7-8 years or so, the last decade or so. And I had many conversations with government in the day job. That's kind of what I do. And government approached me in the spring of last year of 2021 to say, look, you do all this, might you help create better dialogue, particularly around what could happen in small businesses. Yeah, I mean, small businesses are half the economy. There's a big focus on what happens in big businesses in terms of diversity at work. And I said, look, I'd love to do that. I mean, I've run a small business for most of my life. My business, Cicero, AMO, most of my career. But actually, I've seen how larger businesses can perhaps go faster. So I took my business into a large global communications group called Havas just at the start of the pandemic. And I can see there's a lot more bandwidth and a lot more opportunity. So I said to government, look, let's create a bit more of a focus here around how we can support smaller businesses. They said, well, that's a good idea. We did several events. And then I think I rather talked myself into a job by the summer of last year was appointed as the UK's first ever LGBT business champion. It's a role I absolutely loved until I had to step back.
So you did enjoy your position?
I absolutely loved it. I mean, the chance to go further and faster in terms of support for LGBT people, the opportunity to allow businesses, large and small, to showcase what they're doing, the opportunity to help LGBT people in work in places where it is illegal still to be LGBT plus. I mean, there are 70 countries in the world where it's still illegal to be gay. Some of those countries, sadly, will throw you off a building, and if you're gay, and that's perfectly legal. So really, we were kind of making a whole bunch of progress on how business can support greater diversity, support, and allow people to be themselves at work. And I really enjoyed it.
I'm really glad you enjoyed your post there. But obviously, in light of recent events after the controversial not full ban of conversion therapy, you had to resign your post. And I see here that it says you had to resign, and with a heavy heart, you did that. Why did you feel that it had to be the time for you to resign then?
Because it wasn't the basis on which I took the job, Oscar. I took the job on the basis that I was the LGBT champion, not just the LGBT champion. And, you know, the government decided that it wanted to, well, firstly, briefly, for about 3 or 4 hours, not ban conversion therapy. For those of you that are aware, you know, conversion therapy I would call quackery. It's basically trying to convince people who are LGBT that they shouldn't be, or that they could be cured of being gay. I mean, I don't need to be cured of being gay. I don't know what you and your listeners think. I mean,
no, of course not. Of course not. It's to say
being gay is an inherent part of me, and
natural.
Yeah, entirely, absolutely. And it was a manifesto commitment. The government saw pretty quickly that there was a big backlash against the idea of pulling the legislation completely. So they made a sort of partial U-turn to say, well, actually, we'll ban it for LGBT people, but not necessarily immediately for trans people. And I'd been making commitments only a week, 10 days earlier to say that the policy being pursued was a all-inclusive policy. And I thought, well, no, this is a sort of matter of a point of principle for me. And I do think in public life, when you are, you know, to some extent, you feel your principles are being compromised, that, you know, that's a moment to step back. But there's a big battle going on in terms of what happens in the forthcoming Queen's Speech and the legislation. And I do think that the government's got it wrong on this one. And I think
100% agree. I 100% agree.
I think there will be change. I think there's a lot of support in Parliament to have an all-inclusive, comprehensive ban.
I totally agree with you. And I know that earlier in the year, even, there was an LGBTQ plus panel that 3 members quit over the government dragging their heels on just the whole ban itself. And then the panel was disbanded altogether. And now that you've quit, do you think that could be the final thing to make the government really think, you know what, we need to change and we need to do the good thing, do the right thing to help and support all LGBTQ plus people?
Well, look, I think an opportunity has been missed here. I mean, sadly, also, as I resigned, the government was, cancelled, in a way forced to cancel, because a lot of the civil society groups that support LGBT people pulled out of a global conference that was going to be taking place in June, which we're all working towards. A real opportunity for the UK to show that it was leading on LGBT rights, and that opportunity has been taken away. Look, let's not dwell on the negative. I do think there is an opportunity to sort of build back this conversation again. I hope Parliament's going to, as they make this an all-inclusive ban, and we can, go forward after quite a difficult few months.
I couldn't agree more. And obviously, I want to move on now to your business, Cicero and Ammo. What exactly? I know that you guys are a public relations and some would say lobbying firm. I mean, what exactly do you do there for my listeners to understand?
Yeah. So basically, we're trying to help shape public opinion, shape legislation, shape regulation. So that there's a really, really, really robust and important debate that takes place before legislation or market activity kind of takes place. So we work with politicians, we work with journalists, work with regulators. Do quite a lot of voter polling to inform kind of campaigns. We called the business Cicero after the famous Roman orator Marcus Tullius Cicero.
So
those of you who are listening who are classicists or a bit more up to date, read a lot of Robert Harris's books about Cicero.
Yeah, I've read those.
Right. So that the whole thing about Cicero was he was about having a great conversation. Yeah. And we called the business Cicero because actually what we try and do is help the organizations that we work with have a great conversation. I do believe, particularly in the 21st century, that communications is a one-way street where you just push and receive. In a digital world, it's a conversation, and it's about trying to have the best conversation that you can.
I mean, that's a very, very nice summary. Thank you so much. And I wanted to talk about. So this is a sad topic, and I know a lot of people in school struggle to come out to their peers, and a lot of people in work struggle to come out to their colleagues. And how is that for you?
So, I mean, I didn't come out until after school, until after university. I don't think I came out actually until I was in 23, 24. I'd already started work, and I was, you know, in a way, I was leading a bit of a double life. You know, I was, you know, not out at work, and quite nervous, quite anxious about being out in my personal life. Things have moved on, thank goodness, considerably. But was I really out at work? What did I make it a whole part of me? Probably not really until the last 10 years or so, Oscar. And I, you know, in a way, I look back and I think, well, what was I waiting for? Look, when I was born, the legislation to decriminalize being gay had only just been passed. And I was born in Scotland, and that legislation actually only applied initially to England. You weren't legal being gay until I was 12 years old in Scotland. Yeah. So you kind of brought, you know, it was so fresh that you kind of brought up in an era where, whilst it might have been legal, there wasn't an awful lot of acceptance around, and thank goodness things are so much better than they were. But I just decided really about a decade ago that I would make all of me a more definitive part of me at work. And my business is 6 times larger than it was a decade ago. As I say, we've you know, taken the business into Havas. They've taken a strategic stake in the business, and you know, more people have kind of come to find us as a result. So I suppose my message would be, you know, absolutely bring all of you to every situation. You know, being gay is a part of you. It's not all of you, but it is a very important part of you. And I think that sort of honesty and candor is really, really important in terms of just being happy and fulfilled.
Yeah, but it's such a shame that for some it's still a really difficult experience coming out in the workplace.
And it is, and for me, that's the importance of signaling from, you know, as you kind of grow in life and grow a business and become a leader in a business. It's an important thing to do to signal that acceptance is absolutely vital. You know, you must allow people to flourish. And I mean, I think the current statistics tend to show that about a third of gay people are still not out or don't feel comfortable that they can be out at work. Now, there's, you know, I would never be in the place where I would want to force people out. Absolutely not. But it's, I think, quite important that people feel that they're able to be themselves, and they don't feel that they have to hide that.
That is it. It's that in workplaces and in environments where people may feel uncomfortable still, it's so vital that people know that they will be accepted for who they are. And I think that can boost everyone's mental health. It can boost performance at work. It can really make people feel loads better with their life. And I really think that's an important thing to do.
And there's evidence that that's the case. There really is hard
evidence now
that that's the case. Yeah.
And I know that you work for a number of charities alongside the unpaid role as business champion, which you've now resigned from. I know you still work as an ambassador for Stonewall, I believe, and in the charity Give Out. Could you describe some of your roles at those two charities?
Yeah, I mean, with Stonewall, it's really about helping them bring awareness to some of their activity, helping them fundraise, because charities can't do their stuff without money. So helping them with that. Give Out is an amazing initiative. I was involved in the early phases of Give Out, and it's a platform to allow people to give support, particularly to LGBT charities in some of those countries where it is really not safe to be me. So in several territories, Give Out has given significant grassroots support to LGBTQ activists who operate in very, very tough locations, and I'm really kind of proud of that. And its whole focus really is. I mean, it's very much kind of a global approach
across the world. And I mean, being part of something like that, I mean, how do you come across these things? Did the charity reach out to you? Did you reach out to the charity?
Yeah, I mean, I met the founder of the charity, an amazing guy called Elliot Vaughan, who had this idea. I met him actually through some of the wider activism I was getting involved in this space, and he said, do you want to become a trustee and help us? And I said, well, yeah, why not? And it's been an amazing ride.
I'm so glad you've done that stuff and really helped people. So to finish off, I have a few listener questions from people. Starting with number one, it's from a 16-year-old boy named Tens. He says, if you're originally a man, have XY chromosomes, and have changed gender, e.g. become trans, in the British law, does the law still treat you as your original gender? For example, a woman who used to be a man had a fight with another woman who is born XX chromosomes. Will the trans person be judged as partially male because she will still have some natural strength due to her original male testosterones?
Yeah, so there is legislation that allows people to change their gender recognition. Yeah, there is something called a gender recognition certificate. Yeah, so in these particular cases, with the right level of counselling and support, and when somebody transitions through that process, they can also apply for something called a gender recognition certificate that then allows you to change your gender recognition and to allow you to be defined and treated by both the public system and anywhere else where you need to interact in the gender that you have transitioned to or wish to be known for. Yeah, so there is very well worked through legislation that allows that to happen.
Thanks. I hope that helped you, Thames. And also I've got one more from Onyx Gardner, also 16. She says, what steps do you think that the government should/can make to improve trans issues with the public and also in Parliament?
Well, just having been through the experience that I've been through over the past few weeks, I think we all need to try and stop making trans people's experiences a political football. These are people's lives that we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think there needs to be just a lot cooler, more rational kind of conversation that allows for a better and more informed conversation to take place. Frankly, an awful lot of it is not happening on the internet right now, and we just need to make that a whole lot better.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you, Iain. I hope that answered your questions, Onyx and Thames. Thank you so much for this interview today. I've very much enjoyed myself, and I hope you have learned stuff, and I hope you've enjoyed yourself, Iain, as well.
Oscar, it's been great to be with you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.